I'm Ranger Miles Corbin, and the dense forests of the Appalachian Mountains are my domain. My days are usually quiet. The rustle of leaves, the distant call of a hawk, the steady rhythm of my boots on the trail. But today, quiet turned into something else. It started with a tremor, a low rumble that shook the ground beneath my feet. I initially dismissed it as a minor earthquake, common enough in this region. Then I heard it, a guttural shriek, unlike anything I'd ever encountered. It echoed through the trees, a chilling sound that raised the hair on my arms. Following the sound, I stumbled upon a sight that would forever haunt my nightmares. A nest, or rather, a lair. It was massive, woven from branches, bones, and something unnatural, nestled amidst the gnarled roots of an ancient oak. The stench hit me first, a sickening combination of decay and something else, something acrid and alien. Then I saw them, the cryptids, small, hunched figures with skin like parchment and eyes that glowed with an unsettling intelligence. They scurried around the lair, their movements jerky and unsettling. As I watched, mesmerized and horrified, one of the creatures turned its glowing gaze towards me. It let out another ear-piercing shriek, and the others followed suit. The air crackled with an unseen energy, the ground beneath me trembling once more. I knew, instinctively, that I was in terrible danger. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to get out of there, warn someone, but as I turned to flee, a larger figure emerged from the depths of the lair. It was taller than me, its form shrouded in shadow, but I could make out its eyes. The same unsettling glow, but larger, more intense. It was the source of the tremors, the alpha, the guardian of this unholy nest. And it was looking right at me. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I wasn't going anywhere. The Appalachian Mountains have always held an air of mystery, steeped in folklore and whispered tales of strange creatures lurking in the shadows. I'd always dismissed them as local legends, the product of overactive imaginations. Now, standing frozen before this monstrous creature, I realized how wrong I'd been. These mountains, ancient and untouched, held secrets darker than I could have ever imagined. My hand instinctively went to my radio, but it was dead. The strange energy emanating from the lair must have interfered with the signal. I was alone, trapped in this desolate corner of the wilderness with creatures that defied explanation. I remember my grandfather's stories, tales of the Cherokee people and their reverence for these mountains, their warnings of spirits and guardians that protected the sacred land. He'd spoken of creatures that walked between worlds, beings of immense power and malevolence. I'd scoffed at his stories then, but now they seemed chillingly real. The alpha cryptid let out a low growl, a sound that vibrated through my bones. The smaller creatures chittered excitedly, their glowing eyes fixated on me. I felt a primal fear grip me, a fear that went beyond the instinct for survival. This was a fear of the unknown, of the ancient and powerful forces that I had unwittingly stumbled upon. That I scanned my surroundings, desperately searching for an escape route. The dense foliage offered little cover, the towering trees seeming to close in around me. The air grew heavy, the silence punctuated only by the unsettling sounds emanating from the lair. I knew I couldn't stay here, couldn't face whatever horrors these creatures were capable of. I had to find a way out, a way to survive this encounter and warn others of the danger lurking in these ancient mountains. The alpha cryptid took a step towards me, the ground trembling with its weight. The smaller creatures mimicked its movement, their glowing eyes burning into me. I knew I had to act, had to do something before they attacked. I reached for my bear spray, the only weapon I had. It was a pathetic defense against creatures of this size and power, but it was all I had. I raised the canister. The alpha let out another ear-splitting shriek, and the smaller creatures surged forward. They moved with an unnatural speed, their small bodies blurring as they closed the distance between us. I fired the spray, the orange cloud engulfing the creatures. They recoiled, screeching in pain, but the effect was short-lived. The alpha, seemingly unaffected by the spray, continued its advance. I backed away, spraying frantically, but it was no use. The creatures were too many. Too fast. One of the smaller cryptids lunged at me, its sharp claws tearing at my leg. I stumbled, the pain searing through my flesh. I kicked out, connecting with the creature's frail body, sending it sprawling. But more were coming, their glowing eyes filled with a predatory hunger. I knew I couldn't fight them all off. I had to escape, had to find a way to get away from this nightmare. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the throbbing pain in my leg, and ran. I plunged deeper into the forest, the branches whipping at my face, the sounds of the creature's shrieks echoing behind me. I stumbled over roots and rocks, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away, had to survive. The forest grew darker, the trees denser, the air thick with the unnatural stench of the lair. I could hear the creatures behind me, their pursuit relentless. I was losing ground, my strength fading. I knew, with a sinking dread, that I might not make it out of this alive, that as I ran, a new sound reached my ears, the rushing water of a creek. It was a faint sound, but it offered a glimmer of hope. Water might throw off the creature's scent, give me a chance to escape. I changed direction, pushing myself harder, the pain in my leg a constant reminder of the danger I was in. The creek came into view, a narrow ribbon of water cutting through the dense undergrowth. I plunged into it, the cold water shocking my system, but I welcomed the relief. I waded through the creek, the current pulling at my legs, the rocks slippery beneath my feet. The sounds of the cryptids faded slightly, but I knew they were still out there, hunting me. That I thought of Sarah, my wife, back home waiting for me. We'd argued that morning, a silly argument about something I couldn't even remember now. The thought of her, of never seeing her again, fueled my desperation. I had to survive, had to make it back to her. The creek led me to a small cave, hidden behind a curtain of vines. It was a narrow opening, barely big enough for me to squeeze through, but it offered a chance to hide, to catch my breath. That I crawled inside, the darkness enveloping me. The air was damp and musty, but it was a sanctuary from the horrors outside. I pressed my back against the cold stone, trying to control my breathing, listening for any sign of the cryptids. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of dripping water. I knew I couldn't stay here long. The creatures were intelligent. They would find me eventually. I needed a plan, a way to outsmart them, to turn the tables. Time was running out. The darkness of the cave pressed in on me, amplifying the throbbing pain in my leg. I ripped a strip of fabric from my shirt and bound the wound as best I could, the rough material scratching against the torn flesh. As I worked, my fingers brushed against something cold and metallic in my pocket. My grandfather's compass. He'd given it to me just before he died, a relic passed down through generations. I'd almost forgotten I had it. That I clutched the compass, the cool metal grounding me in the suffocating darkness. It wasn't just a compass. It was a symbol of my grandfather, of his stories, of the connection to these mountains he'd tried to instill in me. I opened the compass, the needle spinning wildly, then settling on a direction I hadn't expected. It wasn't pointing north. It was pointing deeper into the cave. Hesitantly, I crawled further into the darkness, following the compass's strange pull. The air grew colder, the silence deeper. The passage narrowed, forcing me to crawl on my belly. The fear returned, a chilling premonition that I was heading towards something significant. Then the passage opened into a larger chamber. The air here was different, charged with an unseen energy. And in the center of the chamber, bathed in an ethereal glow, was a crystal formation, unlike anything I'd ever seen. It pulsed with light, casting strange shadows that danced on the cave walls. That as I watched, mesmerized, the smaller cryptids appeared at the mouth of the passage. They hesitated, their glowing eyes fixated on the crystal. They seemed afraid. Then the alpha appeared, its massive form filling the entrance. It let out a low growl, a sound filled with not just anger, but fear. It seemed the crystal held power over them, a power they both craved and feared. This was the turning point. I knew, instinctively, that this crystal was the key to my survival, the key to understanding these creatures and their connection to these ancient mountains. The alpha cryptid edged closer to the crystal, its movements hesitant, its growls laced with a strange mixture of fear and fascination. The smaller cryptids remained at the entrance, their eyes still fixated on the glowing formation. I realized they wouldn't approach the crystal as long as the alpha remained wary. This gave me an idea, a desperate, risky idea, that I crawled closer to the crystal, my heart pounding in my chest. The air around it crackled with energy, a tingling sensation running through my body. I reached out and touched the smooth surface of the crystal. The moment my fingers made contact, the cave resonated with a deep hum, and the crystal pulsed with an even brighter light. The alpha cryptid reacted instantly, letting out a furious roar. The smaller cryptids shrieked and scattered, their fear amplified by the crystal's surge of power. The alpha lunged towards me, its eyes burning with rage. I rolled away just as it reached me, narrowly avoiding its razor-sharp claws. I knew I couldn't fight it, not directly. I had to use the crystal, had to harness its power against the creatures that I scrambled to my feet, my legs screaming in protest, and position myself between the alpha and the crystal. The alpha hesitated again, its gaze shifting between me and the glowing formation. It seemed to understand that the crystal's power was somehow connected to me now. This gave me a dangerous advantage. I raised my hand towards the crystal, focusing my will, my fear, my desperation into a single thought. Get them away from me. That the crystal responded, its light intensifying, the hum growing louder. The alpha cryptid recoiled, its eyes wide with fear, and backed away slowly, its smaller brethren following suit. They retreated back into the passage, their shrieks echoing through the cave as they disappeared into the darkness. The silence that descended upon the cave after the cryptids retreated was almost as unnerving as their presence. The crystal pulsed softly, its light casting long, dancing shadows on the cave walls. I stood there, my hand still outstretched towards it, my body trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. I had faced the creatures, harnessed the power of the crystal, and survived. But I knew this wasn't over, that I lowered my hand, the tingling sensation fading, and took a step back from the crystal. I needed to understand what had happened, what this crystal was, and how it held power over the cryptids. I examined the formation closely. It was unlike any mineral I'd ever seen, its facets shimmering with an inner light. It felt warm to the touch, radiating a subtle energy that seemed to resonate with my OWN. As I studied the crystal, a wave of dizziness washed over me. Images flashed through my mind, fragmented and disjointed. Ancient rituals, chanting figures, and the cryptids themselves, depicted not as monsters, but as guardians, protectors of this sacred place. I stumbled back, my head spinning, the visions fading as quickly as they had appeared. I realized then that the crystal wasn't just a source of power. It was a window into the past, a repository of ancient knowledge and forgotten history. The encounter with the cryptids, the discovery of the crystal, had changed me. The fear was still there, but it was tempered by a newfound sense of purpose. I had been chosen, somehow, to witness this, to understand the secrets hidden within these mountains. I knew I couldn't just leave, couldn't simply walk away and forget what I had seen. I had a responsibility not just to protect these mountains, but to protect the world from the forces that dwelled within them. I had to find a way to understand the crystal's power, to learn how to control it, to use it to protect both humanity and the ancient beings that guarded these sacred grounds. My leg throbbed relentlessly, a constant reminder of the danger I was still in. I knew I couldn't stay in the cave forever. I had to get back to civilization, warn others about the cryptids and the power they possessed. But I also knew I couldn't leave the crystal behind. It was too important, too dangerous to fall into the wrong hands. That I carefully examined the crystal, trying to determine its size and weight. It was larger than I initially thought, and surprisingly heavy. I knew I couldn't carry it alone, not in my condition. I needed help. I reached for my radio again, hoping against hope that the signal had returned. To my surprise, it crackled to life. I quickly contacted dispatch, my voice strained, explaining the situation as best I could. They were skeptical, understandably, but agreed to send a team to my location. As I waited for the rescue team, I explored the chamber further, searching for any clues that might shed light on the crystal's origins and purpose. I found ancient carvings on the cave walls, symbols that mirrored those I had seen in my vision. They depicted the cryptids, the crystal, and figures that seemed to be human, interacting in some kind of ritual. I realized that this cave wasn't just a lair. It was a sanctuary, a place of power where the cryptids and humans had once coexisted, perhaps even collaborated. The realization sent a shiver down my spine. What had happened to break that connection? What had turned the cryptids into the monstrous creatures I had encountered? I knew the answers lay somewhere within the crystal, within the secrets it held. I just had to find a way to unlock them. The sound of approaching helicopters broke the silence of the cave. The rescue team had arrived. The climax was approaching. The rescue team arrived, their faces etched with concern and disbelief as they took in the scene. The glowing crystal, the ancient carvings, and me, battered and bruised, clutching my grandfather's compass. I explained everything, the cryptids, the crystal's power, the visions I'd seen. They listened intently, their initial skepticism replaced by a growing unease that we decided to transport the crystal back to base for further study. As we prepared to move it, the ground began to tremble again. The cryptids were back. They emerged from the passage, their eyes burning with an even more intense glow than before. They seemed enraged, their shrieks echoing through the cave, amplified by the confined space. The Alpha led the charge, its massive form radiating an aura of pure malevolence. It was clear they weren't just guarding the crystal. They were trying to reclaim it. Chaos erupted. The rescue team opened fire, their weapons echoing through the cave, but the bullets seemed to have little effect on the creatures. They moved with an unnatural speed, dodging the bullets, their claws tearing at anyone who got too close. I knew we were outmatched. We couldn't fight them off. We had to escape, had to get the crystal to safety. I grabbed the crystal, its weight surprisingly manageable now, and ran towards the cave entrance, the rescue team covering my retreat. The cryptids swarmed us, their shrieks deafening, the air thick with the stench of their bodies. One of the team members fell, a cryptid latching onto his arm, its claws tearing through his flesh. I knew I couldn't leave him behind. I turned back, grabbing a flare gun from another team member, and fired it at the cryptid. The bright light and intense heat startled the creature, forcing it to release its grip. We dragged the injured team member with us, scrambling towards the helicopters waiting outside. The Alpha cryptid lunged at me, its claws extended, its eyes burning with rage. Just as it reached me, the crystal pulsed with light, a wave of energy knocking the creature back. I stumbled out of the cave, the crystal clutched tightly in my arms, and into the blinding sunlight. We were safe for now. We flew back to base, the crystal secured in a reinforced container. The injured team member received immediate medical attention, his wounds thankfully not life-threatening. The events of the past few hours replayed in my mind, the chilling shrieks of the cryptids, the power of the crystal, the ancient carvings in the cave. I knew this was just the beginning. The crystal was placed in a secure research facility, its secrets slowly being unraveled by scientists and specialists. The visions I had experienced, the ancient connection between humans and cryptids, were confirmed by the carvings and symbols found in the cave. It became clear that these creatures weren't simply monsters. They were guardians, protectors of a power that had been forgotten by humanity. The crystal was a key, a conduit to this power, and the cryptids were determined to keep it out of our hands. The incident sparked a debate, a discussion about our relationship with the unknown, with the forces that lie hidden just beyond our understanding. Some argued for the destruction of the crystal, fearing its power. Others, myself included, believed that we needed to understand it, to learn from it, to find a way to coexist with the creatures that guarded it. The Appalachian Mountains held their secrets close, but the veil had been lifted, a glimpse into a world beyond our comprehension. I knew my life would never be the same. I was no longer just a forest ranger. I was a guardian, a protector of a secret that could change the world, for better or for worse. Years later, the crystal remains under lock and key, its secrets still being studied. The cryptids haven't been seen since that day, but the memory of their chilling shrieks still echoes in my nightmares. The mountains remain silent, their mysteries guarded closely, waiting for the day when humanity is ready to understand the power that lies hidden within them. I still patrol the forests, but now I listen more closely to the whispers of the wind, the rustling of the leaves, the ancient stories that echo through the trees. What do you think lurks in the shadows of the unknown? Have you ever encountered something you couldn't explain? Share your stories, your thoughts, your fears. The truth is out there, waiting to be discovered. Are you listening? The wind howled through the whispering pines, a desolate stretch of forest nestled deep in the Rockies. I'm Ranger Jake, and I've spent years patrolling these woods, but I'd never felt a chill like this before. It wasn't the biting mountain air. It was something else. A primal fear, a sense of being watched. It started subtly, a flicker of movement in the periphery, the snap of a twig where no animal should be. Then came the tracks, massive, three-toed prints that didn't match any known predator. They led me off the trail, deeper into the heart of the Whispering Pines, a place locals whispered was haunted. The pines themselves seemed to twist and writhe, their branches skeletal fingers reaching out to claw at the sky. The air grew heavy, the silence broken only by the eerie creak of the trees. And then I saw it, a nest if you could call it that, more like a lair, woven from branches, bones, and something unnatural. It pulsed with a faint, sickly green light, the source of which I couldn't discern. The stench hit me next, a putrid mix of decay and something alien, something that burned my nostrils and made my stomach churn. I knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that whatever had made this nest wasn't of this world. Small, hunched figures emerged from the lair. They moved with a jerky, unsettling grace, their skin like polished obsidian, their eyes glowing with an unnatural intelligence. Cryptids. The whispers were true. They chittered amongst themselves, their voices a high-pitched, grating sound that set my teeth on edge. As I watched, frozen in place by a mixture of fear and fascination, one of them turned its gaze towards me. Its glowing eyes locked onto mine, and a shiver ran down my spine. It let out a piercing shriek, a sound that echoed through the pines, a call to arms. And from the depths of the lair, a larger figure emerged. Taller, broader, its form shrouded in shadow, but its eyes, those same glowing eyes, but larger, more intense, burned into me. The Alpha. The Rockies have always been my sanctuary, a place of solitude and peace. I'd grown up on stories of the mountains, tales of their majesty and their mystery, whispered legends of strange creatures and forgotten spirits. I'd always dismissed them as folklore, the product of overactive imaginations. Now, standing face to face with the creatures of those legends, I realized how naive I'd been. My hand instinctively went to my radio, but the signal was dead. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a static charge that prickled my skin. The cryptids were the source. I realized, their very presence disrupting the natural order of things. I was alone, trapped in this desolate corner of the wilderness with creatures that defied explanation. Creatures that seemed to embody the very essence of the mountain's darkest secrets that I thought of my grandfather, a seasoned park ranger who'd spent his life patrolling these same woods. He taught me everything I knew about tracking, survival, and respecting the wild. He'd also warned me about the Whispering Pines, a place he said held a power that could both heal and destroy. He'd never spoken of cryptids, not directly, but his stories of strange encounters and unexplained phenomena now took on a new, chilling meaning. The alpha cryptid let out a low growl, a sound that vibrated through the very ground beneath my feet. The smaller cryptids mimicked its movement, shifting and swaying like grotesque puppets on invisible strings. The air grew heavier, the silence more oppressive. I knew I couldn't stay here, couldn't risk a confrontation. I had to find a way out, a way to escape the watchful gaze of these creatures and warn others of the danger lurking within the whispering pines. But as I turned to flee, the alpha let out another shriek, and the smaller cryptids surged forward, their glowing eyes fixed on me, their movements swift and predatory. My escape route was cut off. The cryptids closed in, their movements a blur of obsidian and glowing eyes. I reached for my bear spray, a meager defense against creatures of this size and ferocity, but it was all I had. I fired a burst at the closest cryptid, the orange cloud momentarily blinding it, but the effect was short-lived. The creature shrieked in anger, its glowing eyes burning with renewed intensity. The alpha cryptid remained motionless, watching me with an unsettling calm. It seemed to be studying me, assessing my weaknesses. The smaller cryptids circled me, their chittering growing louder, more frenzied. They were toying with me, I realized, hurting me like prey. I fired another burst of spray, this time at the alpha, hoping to deter its advance. But the spray seemed to have no effect on the larger creature. It simply stood there, its eyes glowing, a chilling smile spreading across its face that I knew I couldn't fight them off. I was outnumbered, outmatched. My only option was to run, to use the terrain to my advantage. I turned and sprinted deeper into the whispering pines, the cryptids hot on my heels. The branches whipped at my face, the undergrowth snagged at my legs, but I pushed on, adrenaline coursing through my veins that I could hear the cryptids gaining on me, their shrieks echoing through the trees. I stumbled over a fallen log, my ankle twisting beneath me. A sharp pain shot up my leg, and I cried out in agony. I tried to get back to my feet, but my ankle wouldn't support my weight. I was trapped. The cryptids closed in, their glowing eyes burning into me, their chittering a chorus of impending doom. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable, but the attack never came. Instead, a low growl rumbled through the forest, a sound different from the cryptid shrieks. It was deeper, more powerful, more primal. The cryptids froze, their eyes turning towards the source of the growl. A new predator had entered the scene. The cryptids parted, revealing a massive grizzly bear, its fur matted and scarred, its eyes burning with a fierce, territorial rage. It stood between me and the cryptids, a formidable barrier of muscle and claw. The alpha cryptid let out a challenging shriek, but the grizzly didn't flinch. It roared back, a sound that shook the very trees, a sound that spoke of ancient power and dominance. The cryptids hesitated, their glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. They seemed to recognize the grizzly as a force to be reckoned with, a creature that even they couldn't easily overcome. A tense standoff ensued, the air thick with anticipation. I watched, mesmerized, my fear momentarily forgotten in the face of this unexpected development. The grizzly took a step towards the alpha cryptid, its massive claws scraping against the ground. The alpha cryptid stood its ground, its smaller brethren huddled behind it, their eyes fixated on the grizzly. I knew this was my chance to escape. I crawled away slowly, my injured ankle throbbing with pain, using the undergrowth as cover. The grizzly and the cryptids remained locked in their standoff, their attention focused on each other. Oblivious to my escape, that I reached the edge of the whispering pines, the trees thinning, the oppressive silence lifting. I looked back, catching one last glimpse of the grizzly and the cryptids, their forms silhouetted against the darkening sky. The grizzly had given me a chance to escape, a chance to survive. But I knew I couldn't just leave. I had to warn others, had to find a way to protect the unsuspecting world from the creatures lurking within the whispering pines. And I had to understand why the grizzly had intervened, what connection it had to these strange, otherworldly beings. The mystery of the whispering pines had deepened, its secrets now intertwined with the lives of not just cryptids, but the very guardians of the wilderness itself. That I limped back to my ranger station, the encounter with the cryptids and the grizzly replaying in my mind. I contacted my superiors, reporting the strange tracks and the disrupted radio signals, carefully omitting the details of the cryptids, knowing they wouldn't believe me. They promised to send a team to investigate, to check for any unusual activity in the Whispering Pines. But I knew I couldn't wait for them. I had to go back, had to understand what was happening in those woods. I spent the next few days researching local legends, poring over old maps and historical records, searching for any mention of the cryptids or the Whispering Pines. I found stories of strange disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and whispered tales of creatures that walked between worlds. The legends spoke of a connection between the cryptids and the grizzly bears, a symbiotic relationship that dated back centuries. The grizzlies were said to be the guardians of the mountains, protectors of the balance between the natural and the supernatural. Armed with this new knowledge, I returned to the Whispering Pines, this time prepared. I carried a tranquilizer gun, hoping to capture one of the smaller cryptids for study. I also brought a recording device, hoping to capture the cryptids' strange vocalizations, hoping to decipher their language. As I approached the lair, the air grew heavy again, the silence broken only by the eerie creaking of the pines. The cryptids were there, waiting for me. The alpha emerged from the lair, its glowing eyes fixed on me, its posture less aggressive than before, more curious. The smaller cryptids remained hidden, their presence felt rather than seen. The alpha cryptid approached me slowly, stopping a few feet away. It tilted its head, studying me, as if trying to understand my intentions. I raised my hand slowly, showing it that I meant no harm. And then it spoke, not a shriek, not a growl, but a series of clicks and whistles, a language I somehow understood. It was telling me its story, the story of its people, the story of the Whispering Pines. The turning point had arrived. Communication, a bridge between worlds. The alpha cryptid's communication was fragmented, disjointed, but I understood the essence of its message. They were the guardians of the Whispering Pines, protectors of an ancient energy source that lay hidden deep within the mountains. They had been watching me, studying me, trying to determine if I was a threat or an ally. The grizzly bear, it explained, was their ancient protector, a kindred spirit that understood the balance of the forest. It had intervened because it sensed my fear, my lack of malicious intent. The revelation stunned me. These creatures, these cryptids, weren't monsters. They were protectors, guardians of a power I couldn't even comprehend. My fear gave way to awe, to a profound sense of respect for these ancient beings. I responded to the alpha cryptid, using the same clicks and whistles it had used, expressing my desire to understand, to learn, to help. The alpha cryptid seemed to understand. It gestured towards the lair, inviting me to enter. I hesitated, a flicker of fear returning, but I knew I had to trust them. I followed the alpha cryptid into the lair, the smaller cryptids watching me with cautious curiosity. Inside, the lair was surprisingly warm, the sickly green light emanating from a crystalline structure at the center of the chamber. It pulsed with energy, a gentle hum vibrating through the air. This was the source of their power, the energy they were protecting. The alpha cryptid explained that the energy source was unstable, threatened by human activity encroaching upon the Whispering Pines. They needed help, it said, help to protect the energy source, help to maintain the balance of the forest. The consequences of my encounter with the cryptids were profound. My understanding of the world, of the delicate balance between humanity and nature, had been irrevocably altered. I was no longer just a park ranger. I was a mediator, a bridge between two worlds, tasked with a responsibility far greater than I could have ever imagined. The weight of the cryptid's request settled heavily on me. Protecting the energy source, maintaining the balance of the Whispering Pines. It was a monumental task, one I wasn't sure I was equipped to handle. But I knew I couldn't refuse. I had been chosen, somehow, to play a role in this ancient dance between humanity and the supernatural. I spent the next few weeks working with the cryptids, learning about the energy source, understanding its delicate balance. They showed me how to harness its power, how to channel its energy for healing and protection. The smaller cryptids, initially wary, began to trust me, their chittering taking on a friendlier tone. The alpha cryptid became my mentor, my guide into this hidden world. That I learned that the energy source was connected to the very life force of the mountains, a delicate ecosystem that had existed for millennia. Human activity, with its relentless expansion and disregard for nature, was disrupting this balance, threatening to destabilize the energy source and unleash its power in unpredictable ways. I realized that I couldn't simply protect the energy source. I had to protect the entire ecosystem. I had to find a way for humanity and the cryptids to coexist. The challenge was immense. I had to convince my superiors, the scientific community, the world, of the existence of these creatures and the importance of protecting their habitat. I knew it would be a difficult task, one that would be met with skepticism and ridicule. But I was determined to succeed. I had overcome my initial fear, my prejudice against the unknown. I had grown, evolved into something more than just a park ranger. I was a protector, a guardian, a voice for the voiceless. I was ready to face the world, to fight for the whispering pines, for the cryptids, for the balance of nature itself. My journey had just begun that I returned to civilization, armed with my newfound knowledge and a determination to protect the whispering pines. I gathered evidence, photographs of the cryptids, recordings of their vocalizations, samples of the strange flora and fauna that thrived within their protected domain. I presented my findings to my superiors, carefully choosing my words, knowing that the truth, in its entirety, would be too much for them to accept. That I spoke of unusual energy readings, of unexplained phenomena, of the need to protect the delicate ecosystem of the whispering pines. I hinted at the existence of unknown species, carefully avoiding the word cryptid. To my surprise, they listened. The evidence, though circumstantial, was compelling. The energy readings were undeniable, the ecological anomalies too significant to ignore. They agreed to a limited investigation, a scientific expedition to study the whispering pines and determine the source of the unusual activity. That I knew this was my chance. I volunteered to lead the expedition, knowing that I could guide them to the cryptids, could facilitate a peaceful encounter, could prove to the world that these creatures were not a threat, but a vital part of the ecosystem. The expedition was prepared meticulously. Scientists, researchers, and security personnel were assembled, their equipment carefully chosen, their mission clearly defined. I briefed them on the unusual conditions within the whispering pines, the disrupted radio signals, the strange energy readings. I warned them to be respectful, to be cautious, to be prepared for the unexpected. That as we prepared to enter the whispering pines, I felt a sense of trepidation, but also a sense of hope. This was the moment of truth, the culmination of my journey, the chance to bridge the gap between two worlds. The climax was approaching. That we entered the whispering pines, the air immediately growing heavy, the silence oppressive. The expedition team, initially excited and curious, became subdued, their chatter replaced by hushed whispers. I led them towards the cryptid's lair, my heart pounding in my chest. I hoped, prayed, that the cryptids would understand our intentions, that they would accept us as allies. That as we approached the lair, the cryptids emerged, their glowing eyes fixated on us. The alpha cryptid stepped forward, its posture cautious, its gaze searching. The smaller cryptids remained behind it, their chittering a nervous chorus. I stepped forward, raising my hands in peace, repeating the clicks and whistles I had learned, assuring them that we meant no harm. The alpha cryptid listened intently, its head tilted, its eyes narrowed. Then it responded, its voice a mixture of caution and curiosity. It asked why we had come, what we wanted. I explained our mission, our desire to understand, to learn, to protect. I introduced the scientists and researchers, emphasizing their peaceful intentions. That a tense silence hung in the air. The cryptids and the humans, two worlds colliding, their fates hanging in the balance. Then a member of the security team, startled by a sudden movement in the undergrowth, raised his weapon. The cryptids reacted instantly, their shrieks echoing through the pines, their bodies tensing, ready to attack. The alpha cryptid turned towards me, its eyes filled with a mixture of betrayal and anger. I pleaded with them, using every word, every gesture, every bit of understanding I had gained, to trust us, to give us another chance. The alpha cryptid hesitated, its gaze shifting between me and the armed security team. The tension was palpable, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. Then, the grizzly bear emerged from the trees, its massive form a silent presence, its eyes fixed on the armed security team. The grizzly let out a low growl, a warning rumble that echoed through the forest. The security team lowered their weapons, their fear overriding their training. The grizzly, the ancient guardian, had intervened once again, restoring the balance, preventing a disastrous confrontation. The standoff ended peacefully, the grizzly bear retreating back into the forest, the cryptids relaxing their defensive posture. The alpha cryptid turned back to me, its eyes filled with a newfound trust, a silent acknowledgement of the bond we had forged. The scientists and researchers, awestruck by the encounter, began their work, carefully studying the cryptids, their habitat, the energy source they protected. That I acted as a mediator, translating the cryptids' communications, explaining their needs, their concerns, their hopes for the future. The scientists listened intently, their initial skepticism replaced by a growing respect for these intelligent, sentient beings. The expedition was a success. The data collected, the observations made, proved beyond a doubt the existence of the cryptids and the importance of protecting their habitat. The Whispering Pines were declared a protected zone, human activity restricted, the delicate balance of the ecosystem preserved. The world was astonished by the discovery, the revelation of a hidden world existing alongside our own. The story of the cryptids, the grizzly guardian, and the park ranger who bridged the gap between two worlds became a legend, a testament to the power of understanding, respect, and coexistence. The cryptids remained within the Whispering Pines, their secrets safeguarded, their existence acknowledged. The balance of the forest was restored, the ancient energy source stabilized, its power harnessed for the benefit of all. And I, the park ranger who had stumbled upon their world, became their protector, their voice, their link to humanity. The Whispering Pines were no longer a place of fear and mystery, but a place of wonder and hope, a symbol of the interconnectedness of all living things. Years later, the Whispering Pines thrive, a testament to the successful coexistence of humans and cryptids. The energy source pulses with life, its power harnessed for clean energy, a gift from the mountains to the world. The grizzlies continue their silent vigil, the ancient guardians of the balance. And I, now a seasoned veteran, still walk among the Whispering Pines, listening to the secrets of the wind, the whispers of the trees, the silent language of the cryptids, forever bound to the world I helped protect. The world is full of mysteries, of whispers in the dark, of creatures beyond our understanding. Open your mind to the possibilities. Listen to the whispers of the unknown. And perhaps you too will discover a world beyond your wildest imagination. What unexplained encounters have you had? Share your stories, and let's explore the mysteries together. The truth is out there, waiting to be discovered.